I drove to my son Mark's house on his 32nd birthday, carrying a gift I'd saved months to buy. When I walked through the door, I found my daughter-in-law Jessica packing all my belongings into boxes. My clothes, my photos of Martha, everything that had made that guest room home for 2 years since my wife's passing. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Without looking up, Jessica said coldly, "He doesn't want you here anymore. Mark needs his space back. Find somewhere else to live. 2 years of helping with their children, paying for groceries, fixing their problems, and this was my reward." But instead of begging or breaking down, I smiled and pulled out my phone. "Hello, David? It's Robert. Prepare those eviction papers for tomorrow morning." What Jessica didn't know was that when Mark lost his job last year, I had quietly taken over their mortgage payments. The house was legally mine now. The next day, they received their eviction notice. Don't forget to subscribe. The small velvet box sat heavy in my coat pocket as I pulled into Mark's driveway. 32 years. That's how long I'd been buying birthday gifts for my son, and this one had cost me 3 months of careful saving. The watch inside wasn't flashy, but it was solid, reliable. Like the love I'd been trying to prove since Martha died. 2 years had passed since the funeral. 2 years since I'd sat in that same church pew, watching only a handful of people show up to say goodbye to the woman who'd sent Christmas cards to 47 relatives every December. The emptiness of that day still echoed in my chest, a hollow reminder that family doesn't always mean what you think it means. Moving in with Mark and Jessica had felt like a second chance. Emma and Tyler needed their grandfather, I told myself. And when Mark lost his job 8 months later, I was there to help. Quiet payments for groceries, utilities, and yes, the mortgage. I never made a show of it, never demanded gratitude. Martha always said love was action, not words. The house before me looked perfect. Fresh paint on the shutters, new flowers in the garden boxes. All paid for with my retirement money, though Mark didn't know I kept the receipts. I walked up the front steps, fishing for my key. The same key Jessica had given me 2 years ago, telling me this was home now. The guest room had become my sanctuary, filled with Martha's photos and the reading chair where I'd tell Emma and Tyler bedtime stories. Tyler always asked for the one about the brave knight who saved everyone, but never got thanked. Kids understand things, adults forget. The front door swung open before I could turn the key. "Oh." Jessica stood in the doorway, her face flushed, hair pulled back tight. Behind her, I could see cardboard boxes scattered across the living room floor. "You're early." "I wanted to surprise Mark for his birthday," I said, stepping inside. The smell hit me first. Not the usual mix of coffee and children's. Breakfast. Something sterile, like cleaning products and fresh tape. "What's all this?" Jessica didn't answer immediately. She turned and walked deeper into the house, her movements quick and nervous. I followed, my stomach beginning to tighten with each step. The living room looked like a hurricane had swept through. Boxes everywhere, some sealed, others half-packed. But it wasn't random packing. It was methodical, organized, planned. "Jessica, what's going on?" That's when I saw them. My reading glasses sitting on top of a box marked Robert's Things in black marker. My heart stopped. Below the glasses, I could see the corner of Martha's favorite photo, the one from our wedding day, where she looked so young and hopeful. "Where are you taking my things?" Jessica finally turned around, her face set in a mask I'd never seen before. Cold, distant, like she was looking at a stranger she needed to remove from her property. "We need to talk." But she wasn't walking toward the couch for a conversation. She was walking toward the guest room. My room. I followed, my legs feeling heavier with each step. The door was open. Inside, my entire life was being erased. Clothes folded into boxes, books stacked like they meant nothing. The photo of Martha and me at Emma's first birthday party, wrapped in newspaper like fragile cargo being shipped somewhere far away. What is this? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Jessica picked up another photo, Martha holding Tyler when he was 6 months old, and placed it face down in a box. She didn't look at me when she spoke. This isn't working anymore. What isn't working? This. You. Living here. She gestured around the room like it was evidence of a crime. Mark and I have been talking, and we think it's time you found your own place. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire I couldn't see yet. I don't understand. Did I do something wrong? Are the kids okay? Did something happen at work? Nothing happened. Jessica's voice was getting sharper, more impatient. We just need our space back. We need to be a family again, just the 4 of us. Just the 4 of us. Like I was an intruder. Like these 2 years of helping, of caring, of being there when Mark couldn't find work, and Jessica cried about the bills, like none of that mattered. But I thought this was working. I thought you were happy with the arrangement. I watched her fold my favorite sweater, the one Martha knitted for my 60th birthday. I've been helping with Emma and Tyler, and when Mark lost his job, I just wanted to make sure you were all okay. Jessica paused for a moment, and I thought maybe she was remembering. The nights I stayed up with Tyler when he had fever, the morning I drove Emma to school every day for 3 weeks when their car broke down. The grocery runs, the utility bills, the small repairs around the house. But when she looked up, her eyes were harder than before. We appreciate everything you've done, Robert. We really do. But Mark needs his space back. He needs to feel like the man of his own house again. Feel like the man of his own house, while I paid the mortgage he couldn't afford. Where am I supposed to go? Jessica shrugged, like she was discussing the weather. There are nice senior communities around here, assisted living places. You'd probably be happier with people your own age, assisted living. She was talking about me like I was senile, helpless, someone who needed to be managed rather than loved. I stood there, watching this woman pack away 2 years of my life, like it was spring cleaning. I need you to find somewhere else to live, she said, not even looking up from the box she was sealing. Mark will talk to you when he gets home, but that's what we've decided. The birthday gift felt like a stone in my pocket. I pulled out my phone, my hands steadier than my heart. Hello, David, I said, my voice eerily calm as Jessica continued packing, oblivious to what was coming. Robert, is everything all right? David's voice carried the same steady calm it had for the past 15 years. He'd handled Martha's will, our insurance claims, and every legal question that came with growing older in a world that seemed designed to confuse people like us. I watched Jessica tape another box shut, her movements sharp and efficient. She'd clearly done this before, practiced these motions in her mind until they became muscle memory. David, I need you to clarify something for me. The mortgage situation on Mark's house. When I took over the payments last year, what exactly did that mean legally? There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. Jessica glanced up at me, her face shifting from annoyance to something that looked almost like curiosity. Robert, you remember the paperwork we filed, right? When Mark defaulted on his mortgage payments and faced foreclosure, you didn't just help with the payments. You assumed legal ownership as collateral for the loan amount. My chest tightened. I remembered signing papers, lots of them, but I'd been focused on saving my son's family from losing their home. The legal details had seemed less important than the crisis at hand. What does that mean exactly? It means the house is in your name now. Has been for 18 months. Mark and Jessica are essentially tenants, though we never formalized a rental agreement. You own the property, Robert. The words hit the room like a physical force. Jessica's hand froze halfway to another box. Her face went white, then red, then white again. That can't be right, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I held up a finger, keeping my focus on David's voice. So if I wanted them to leave? Standard eviction procedures would apply, 30 days notice, proper legal documentation. But yes, as the property owner, you have that right. Jessica dropped the tape dispenser. It hit the hardwood floor with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through the sudden silence. Robert, you can't be serious. I looked at her for the first time since making the call. Really looked at her. This woman who'd just told me to find an assisted living facility. This woman who'd been packing my life into boxes like I was already dead. David, how quickly can you prepare eviction papers? If you're serious about this, I can have them ready by tomorrow morning. But Robert, are you sure this is the route you want to take? Family matters can get complicated. Family matters. I thought about Emma and Tyler, probably at school right now, having no idea their mother was erasing their grandfather from their lives. I thought about Mark, who'd been avoiding eye contact with me for weeks, who I now realized had been planning this betrayal while I paid his bills. I'm sure. Jessica was standing now, her hands shaking. Wait. Let's talk about this. You can't just throw us out of our own home. Your own home? I kept my voice level, but something cold was spreading through my chest. Jessica, when's the last time you or Mark made a mortgage payment? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted around the room like she was looking for an escape route. We've been struggling since Mark lost his job, but we're family. Family helps family. You're right. Family helps family. I walked over to one of the boxes marked Robert's Things and pulled out Martha's wedding photo. She looked so young, so trusting. Family doesn't pack each other's belongings while they're out buying birthday gifts. That's not what this is. Then what is it, Jessica? She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking smaller. Mark feels like he's not the man of his own house with you here. He feels like he's failing as a provider. So, instead of talking to me about it, you decided to throw me out? We were going to talk to you. When? After you'd already packed everything I own? Jessica's face crumpled, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine emotion or calculated manipulation. I'd seen her cry before when she wanted something. New furniture, a vacation they couldn't afford, money for clothes that ended up in the back of her closet. David, I'll need those papers first thing tomorrow morning. Robert, please. Jessica's voice was getting higher, more desperate. We can work this out. We don't have anywhere to go. I thought about that. I thought about Mark coming home from whatever he'd been doing all day while I worked to keep his family fed and housed. I thought about him walking into this scene, seeing his wife in tears, seeing me standing calm and collected with my phone to my ear. You told me to find somewhere else to live, I said quietly. You told me Mark needs his space back. You told me I'd be happier in assisted living with people my own age. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? She couldn't answer, or wouldn't. David, what about their personal belongings? What's the protocol for that? They have the full 30 days to remove their possessions. But Robert, the house and everything you've paid for stays with the property. Everything I'd paid for, the new water heater when theirs died in January, the roof repair after the storm in March, the appliances when Jessica decided she needed a kitchen update. Thousands and thousands of dollars, all because I thought I was helping family. I understand. What about the children's things? Jessica's voice was breaking now. Their toys, their clothes, their beds. The children can take whatever belongs to them, I said. But Jessica, you might want to start looking for a place to live. I hung up the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. The house felt different now. Not like a home I was being forced to leave, but like a property I owned. Like a place where I got to decide who stayed and who went. Jessica was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. You can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you, I said, pulling the velvet box from my pocket and setting it on the kitchen counter. I'm doing something for me. For the first time in 2 years. She looked at the gift box, her face cycling through emotions I couldn't read. What's that? Mark's birthday present, a watch. I saved for 3 months to buy it. Jessica reached for the box, then stopped. Robert, please, we made a mistake. We can fix this. Can we? Yes. We'll sit down tonight, all of us, and we'll work out a better arrangement. Mark just needs to feel more involved in the household decisions. Household decisions. I looked around at the boxes, at my life packed away like garbage. Was throwing me out a household decision? We weren't throwing you out. What would you call it? She had no answer for that either. I walked over to the window and looked out at the front yard. The lawn I'd been mowing every Saturday for 2 years. The garden I'd helped Emma plant last spring. The driveway where I'd taught Tyler to ride his bike. Jessica, when Mark gets home, you can explain to him that he's going to get exactly what he wanted. His space back. Just the 4 of you. I could hear her breathing behind me, quick and shallow. But you might want to start looking at apartments tonight, because tomorrow morning you're going to receive official notice that you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. The silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap. Finally, I heard her pick up the tape dispenser from the floor. When I turned around, she was staring at me with something that looked almost like respect mixed with fear. Mark's going to be furious. I nodded slowly, feeling something shift inside my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something colder and more permanent. I'm sure he will be. Jessica's face had gone from confident to confused to terrified in the span of one phone call. Now she stood frozen in my former bedroom, tape dispenser in her trembling hands, staring at me like I'd just revealed I could fly. I need to make some calls, I said, walking past her toward my desk. The desk that had been Martha's before she died, where I'd been keeping meticulous records without even realizing I was building a case. Jessica followed me, her movements jerky and uncertain. Robert, we should wait for Mark. We should all sit down together and discuss this like adults. We're past discussion, Jessica. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, the one that stuck slightly and required just the right angle to pull free. Inside were 2 years' worth of file folders, each labeled with Martha's careful handwriting that I'd continued in my own shaky script after she was gone. Mortgage payments, utilities, groceries, medical expenses, home repairs. Jessica watched me pull out the first folder, her breathing shallow and quick. What is all that? Receipts. I opened the mortgage folder and spread the contents across the desk. Bank statements, canceled checks, online payment confirmations. 18 months of documentation, each payment highlighted in yellow marker. The amounts were staggering, even to me seeing them all together like this. March 2023, $2,847. April 2023, $2,847. May 2023, $2,847. Jessica moved closer, her eyes scanning the papers. You kept all of this? Martha taught me to keep records. She said you never know when you might need proof of where your money went. I pulled out another folder. Utilities. Electric, gas, water, internet, cable. Every month for 2 years. The utility folder was thicker than the mortgage one. Not just the big payments, but the small ones, too. The cable upgrade when Mark wanted premium sports channels. The internet boost when Jessica started working from home. The water bill spike when they installed the hot tub I'd paid for. This is... Jessica's voice trailed off as she looked at the numbers. What, Jessica? This is what? This is a lot of money. $67,000 in mortgage payments alone. Would you like to see the grocery receipts? I didn't wait for her answer. The grocery folder was a testament to just how much a family of 4 could spend when someone else was picking up the tab. Organic produce, premium cuts of meat, name brand everything. I'd never complained, never suggested they buy cheaper alternatives. I'd just paid. $200, $300, sometimes $400 a week, I said, flipping through receipts. Remember the week Mark wanted to try that expensive protein powder? $89 for 1 container. Jessica's face was getting paler with each folder I opened. We didn't ask you to keep track of everything. No, you didn't. But I did anyway. The medical folder was smaller, but more personal. Tyler's emergency room visit when he broke his arm. Emma's orthodontist consultations. The prescription costs that insurance didn't cover. Every copay, every deductible, every expense that came with caring for a family. You paid for Emma's braces? The down payment, yes. $1,200. I pulled out the receipt, dated just 6 weeks ago. Mark said you'd pay me back when he found work. Jessica wrapped her arms around herself. We were going to... Were you? I opened my laptop and pulled up my email. Months of job alerts I'd signed up for, forwarding opportunities to Mark's email address. Resume writing services I'd paid for, interview clothes I'd bought, a career counseling session that cost $300 and that Mark attended exactly once. I've been helping him look for work this whole time, I said, scrolling through the emails. Did you know he hasn't applied for a single job in 3 months? Jessica's mouth opened, then closed. That's not true. It's completely true. Look. I turned the laptop toward her. The job search emails showed a clear pattern. Regular applications and responses through January, then sporadic activity in February and March, then nothing. Complete radio silence since April. But he leaves every morning. He says he's going to interviews. Where does he go, Jessica? She couldn't answer. Or maybe she didn't want to. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The checking account that had been slowly draining for 2 years, paying for a life that wasn't mine, while my own future disappeared one mortgage payment at a time. $127,000, I said quietly. What? That's how much money I've spent keeping this family afloat since I moved in. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, medical bills, home repairs, car payments, insurance, everything. Jessica sank into the chair across from my desk. We didn't know it was that much. You didn't want to know. I opened another folder, this one filled with printouts from my cell phone company, text message records going back 6 months. I'd requested them after Martha died, thinking I might want to preserve our last conversations. But these messages told a different story entirely. These are interesting, I said, pulling out a conversation thread between Mark and Jessica from 3 weeks ago. Jessica's face went white. You can't read our private messages. I can read messages sent to and from my phone plan. The family plan I pay for. I cleared my throat and read aloud. Mark to Jessica. Dad's been acting weird lately, like he owns the place. Jessica to Mark. Well, he basically does pay for everything. Mark. That's the problem. I feel like a kid in my own house. Jessica reached for the papers, but I pulled them back. There's more. Jessica to Mark. Maybe it's time for him to find his own place. Mark. How do we bring that up without seeming ungrateful? Jessica. We'll figure something out. I'm tired of tiptoeing around him. The silence in the room was thick enough to cut. Jessica's breathing was the only sound, quick and panicked. Tiptoeing around me, I repeated. That's interesting phrasing for someone whose rent I've been paying. Robert, those messages are out of context. Are they? I pulled out another printout. Mark to Jessica. Found a realtor who thinks we could get $380,000 for the house. Jessica. That would set us up nice. Fresh start somewhere. Mark. Just need to figure out the dad situation first. Jessica's hands were shaking now. We were just talking. People talk about all kinds of things they don't really mean. The dad situation. I folded the messages carefully and put them back in the folder. That's what I am to you. A situation to be managed. I opened the bottom drawer completely and pulled out a small digital recorder. The kind Martha used to use for her book club meetings when she was secretary. I'd been carrying it in my pocket for the past month, ever since I'd started noticing the way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. This is from last Tuesday, I said, pressing play. Mark's voice filled the room, tinny but clear. I swear, sometimes I want to just tell him to find his own place. It's like having a landlord who lives in your house. Jessica's voice responded. He means well, but you're right. It's suffocating. And the way he acts like he's doing us this huge favor. Mark again. He is doing us a huge favor, that's the problem. But I'm 32 years old. I shouldn't need my dad to pay my mortgage. So we tell him to stop paying it? And then what? We lose the house? Or we sell it and start over somewhere he can't follow us? I clicked the recorder off. Jessica was staring at it like it was a snake that might bite her. You recorded us? I recorded conversations happening in my house, the house I own. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. Not when it's happening in my own home. I pulled out another folder, this one labeled Legal Research. I've been doing my homework, Jessica. One-party consent state. As long as I'm part of the conversation or it's happening on my property, I can record whatever I want. Jessica stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is insane. You're being paranoid and vindictive. Am I? I opened my laptop again and pulled up Mark's social media profiles. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, months of posts about his freeloading father and the burden of caring for aging parents, comments about how he couldn't wait to get his life back, and posts asking friends if they knew of any discreet senior living facilities. He's been planning this for months, Jessica. You both have. The evidence was overwhelming, even to me. Screenshots of apartment listings Mark had saved, real estate estimates for the house, messages to friends asking about job opportunities in other cities. A complete exit strategy that involved erasing me from their lives while keeping my money as long as possible. We were just exploring options. Options that didn't include talking to me. Jessica sank back into the chair, her fight seeming to drain away. What do you want from us, Robert? I want honesty. Fine. Yes, we've been talking about you moving out. Yes, Mark feels emasculated having his father pay for everything. Yes, we've looked at other living arrangements, but that doesn't make us monsters. No, I agreed, closing the laptop and stacking the folders neatly on my desk. But throwing me out without warning while I was buying birthday gifts might... I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, I could see Mrs. Chen from next door watering her garden. She waved when she saw me, the same friendly gesture she'd given me every day for 2 years. I waved back, wondering if she'd noticed the moving boxes through the windows. "The eviction notice will be delivered tomorrow morning," I said without turning around. "You have 30 days to find alternative housing." "Robert, please." "Jessica, you spent this afternoon packing my belongings like I was already dead. You told me to my face that I should find an assisted living facility. You've been planning my removal for months while I paid your bills." I turned to face her. "What exactly are you asking me to please do?" She had no answer for that. I gathered the folders and locked them back in my desk drawer. The evidence was safe, organized, and comprehensive. More importantly, it was mine. "When Mark gets home, you can show him these files," I said, pulling the drawer key from my pocket. "Or you can wait for him to figure it out on his own." I heard Mark's car in the driveway before Jessica did. The familiar rumble of the engine that needed work. Work I'd offered to pay for 3 times in the past month. Jessica's head snapped toward the window, her face cycling through panic, calculation, and something that looked almost like relief. "Robert, please. Let me talk to him first. Let me explain." I gathered the folders from my desk and locked them back in the drawer. "You've had months to explain, Jessica. I think it's time for honesty instead." The front door slammed with more force than necessary. Mark's voice carried through the house, bright and fake, the voice he used when he was performing happiness for neighbors or co-workers. "Hey, birthday boy's home. Where's my family?" Jessica shot me a look that was part desperation, part warning. Then she called back, her voice strained but attempting normal. "In here, honey." "In Dad's room." The footsteps stopped. Mark's voice when it came again was different, suspicious. "Why are you in Dad's room?" I could hear him moving through the house, probably seeing the boxes for the first time. The silence stretched long enough that I knew he was processing what he was looking at. Calculating. Understanding. When Mark appeared in the doorway, his face had already shifted from confusion to something harder. He looked at Jessica first, taking in her tear-stained cheeks and panicked expression. Then he looked at me, sitting calmly at my desk like this was any other evening. "What's going on here?" Jessica opened her mouth, but no words came out. Mark stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the remaining boxes, the half-packed belongings, the careful way I was watching both of them. "Jessica, what's going on?" "Mark, we need to talk." "About what?" His voice was getting louder, more aggressive. "About why my father's belongings are packed in boxes? About why you look like you've been crying?" I stayed silent, watching the dynamic play out. This was their conversation to have, their lies to unravel. I was just the witness now. Jessica looked at me helplessly, then back at Mark. "We made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "I told your father he needed to find his own place." Mark's face went through several expressions at once. Surprise, anger, and something that might have been relief. "You did what?" "I packed his things and told him we needed our space back." "Without talking to me first?" "You said you wanted him gone." "You said you felt like a kid in your own house." Mark's eyes darted to me, then back to Jessica. The conversation was spinning out of control faster than either of them had planned. "That was private, Jessica." "Those were private conversations." "Private conversations about throwing me out," I said quietly. Mark whirled toward me, his face flushing red. "Dad, this is between me and my wife." "Actually, Mark, it's about me." "So I think I should be part of the discussion." "Fine." Mark crossed his arms, his posture shifting into attack mode. "You want to discuss this?" Let's discuss this. Jessica's right. I do feel like a kid in my own house. I can't make a decision about anything without wondering what you'll think. I can't buy groceries or pay a bill or fix a broken faucet without you jumping in to handle it. Is that what you call it? Jumping in? What would you call it? Keeping you from losing your home. Mark's laugh was bitter and sharp. There it is. The guilt trip. The constant reminder that you're saving us from ourselves. I've never said that. You don't have to say it, Dad. It's in every check you write, every bill you pay, every time you fix something I should be fixing myself. I looked at this man, my son, and tried to remember when his gratitude had turned into resentment, when helping had become controlling, when love had become a weapon he used against himself. So you wanted me gone. I wanted my life back. Your life. I pulled the desk drawer key from my pocket. The life where you haven't applied for a job in 3 months? The life where you spend your unemployment money on video games while I pay your mortgage? Mark's face went pale. That's not... How do you know that? I know a lot of things, Mark. I unlocked the drawer and pulled out the folder labeled Employment Records. Mark's eyes widened as he saw the job search emails, the resume services, the documentation of his complete lack of effort over the past quarter. You've been spying on me? I've been paying for your phone plan. I get the records. That's an invasion of privacy. Privacy? I stood up, the folder in my hands feeling heavier than it should. Mark, I've been supporting your family for 2 years. I've paid over $127,000 in bills, mortgage payments, and expenses. I've covered everything while you pretended to look for work and complained to your friends about your freeloading father. We never asked you to do that. You never asked me to stop. Mark grabbed the folder from my hands, his movements angry and defensive. He flipped through the pages, his face getting redder with each document. This is sick, Dad. This is really sick. You're keeping files on us like we're criminals. I'm keeping records of where my money goes. Your money? Mark threw the folder down, papers scattering across the floor. Since when is helping your family about keeping score? Since my family decided to throw me out without warning. We weren't throwing you out. What would you call it? Mark looked at Jessica, then back at me. The fight was draining out of him, replaced by something that looked almost like desperation. We were trying to give you space to live your own life. By packing my belongings while I was buying you a birthday gift? The mention of the gift seemed to hit Mark like a physical blow. His eyes darted to the velvet box still sitting on the kitchen counter, visible through the doorway. Dad, we can work this out. We can sit down like adults and figure out a better arrangement. Can we? Yes. We'll set boundaries. Clear expectations. You can stay, but we need to define roles better. I pulled another folder from the drawer. Mortgage documents. Mark's face changed again. What about them? When you defaulted on your payments 18 months ago, I didn't just help you catch up. I assumed ownership of the house. The silence that followed was complete. Even Jessica, who'd already heard this information, seemed stunned to hear it said so directly. That's impossible. It's legal fact. Mark sank into the chair Jessica had vacated, his head in his hands. You own our house. I own this house. You live in it. But we never signed anything. You signed papers when you defaulted. I signed papers when I took over the mortgage. David handled the legal work. Mark looked up, his eyes bright with tears or anger. You tricked us. I saved you from foreclosure. By stealing our house. By preventing you from losing it entirely. Mark stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward. This is insane. You can't just take someone's house because they missed some payments. I can when they default on their mortgage and I assume the loan. We'll fight this in court. With what money? The question hung in the air like smoke. Mark's face cycled through emotions too quickly to follow. Rage, fear, desperation, calculation. You're going to evict us? Tomorrow morning, you'll receive 30 days' notice. Dad, please. Think about Emma and Tyler. Think about what this will do to them. I did think about them. For 2 years, I thought about them while I paid your bills and listened to you complain about feeling emasculated. Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. What do you want from us? I looked at my son. This man I'd raised and loved and tried to help, and realized I didn't know him anymore. I want you to find somewhere else to live. The weight of those words hung in the air between us. Mark's face had gone from red to white to gray, like all the blood had drained out of him at once. Jessica stood frozen in the corner, her hands pressed against her mouth. I want you to find somewhere else to live, I repeated, my voice steady as stone. Mark's legs seemed to give out. He sank back into the chair, his head falling into his hands. Dad, please. The kids will be fine. They'll adjust. You can't just destroy our family because your feelings got hurt. I'm not destroying anything, Mark. I'm protecting what's mine. After they left the room, whispering urgent plans in the hallway, I sat alone with my folders and my phone. The house felt different now. Not like a place I was visiting, but like a property I controlled. For the first time in 2 years, I was making decisions instead of just paying bills. I called David back first. Robert, how did the conversation go? About as well as you'd expect. They're threatening to fight the eviction in court. On what grounds? They think I tricked them somehow. Mark claims he never understood the mortgage transfer. David's chuckle was dry and professional. The paperwork was very clear. You have all the signed documents? Every page. Then they don't have a legal leg to stand on. But Robert, are you sure about this? Once we serve the eviction notice, there's no taking it back without looking weak. I thought about that. About the birthday gift sitting untouched on the counter. About Martha's photos packed away like they were garbage. About 2 years of trying to buy love from people who saw me as an ATM. I'm sure. I'll have the papers ready first thing tomorrow. 30 days from service, they're out. After hanging up with David, I opened my laptop and started building my case like Martha had taught me to build anything worthwhile. Methodically. Completely. With documentation for everything. The first spreadsheet tracked every payment I'd made. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, medical expenses, home repairs, car payments, insurance premiums. The numbers were staggering even to me. $127,000 over 24 months. More than $5,000 every month, flowing from my retirement account into their lives. The second spreadsheet tracked Mark's income and spending. Unemployment benefits, the occasional odd job, money from selling things I'd bought. Against that, his expenses, video games, restaurant meals, clothes, entertainment subscriptions. The pattern was clear. Mark was spending money on wants while I covered all the needs. The third spreadsheet was the most damaging. A timeline of their deception. Messages about getting rid of me, posts on social media complaining about freeloading parents, real estate searches for houses in other cities. They'd been planning this exit strategy for months, maybe longer. My phone rang. Carol Chen from next door. Robert, honey, is everything okay over there? I saw moving boxes through the window. Carol had been Martha's closest friend in the neighborhood. She'd brought casseroles after the funeral and checked on me every few days since I'd moved in with Mark. If anyone deserved to know the truth, it was her. Carol, it's complicated, but I'm fine. Those boxes looked like someone was packing up your things. They were. Oh, Robert. Are you moving to one of those senior places? Because if you need help looking at options, I know some good ones. The assumption stung, even from someone who cared about me. Actually, Carol, Mark and Jessica are the ones who need to find a new place. There was a long pause. I don't understand. It's my house, Carol. Legally, has been for 18 months. They were trying to throw me out, but it turns out they don't have that authority. Another pause, longer this time. Your house? When Mark defaulted on his mortgage, I took over ownership to prevent foreclosure. They've been living here as my tenants, though we never formalized it. And they tried to evict you from your own house? While I was out buying Mark a birthday gift. Carol's intake of breath was sharp and angry. Those ungrateful, Robert, what can I do to help? Just be aware that things might get complicated over the next few weeks. Complicated how? They're not taking this well. After hanging up with Carol, I called my accountant, Patricia. She'd been handling my finances since Martha died, helping me navigate the maze of retirement accounts and investment portfolios that suddenly became my responsibility. Patricia, I need a complete financial analysis of my support for Mark's family over the past 2 years. Everything you've paid for them? Everything. I need it formatted for legal presentation. Robert, is everything all right? I'm protecting my interests. I'll have it ready by end of business tomorrow. But Robert, $127,000 is a significant amount. You might want to consider whether some of that could be recovered as debt. I hadn't thought about that. The money I'd spent keeping them afloat, legally it might be considered loans rather than gifts, especially if there was evidence they'd been planning to cut me out while taking my money. Put together an analysis of what might be recoverable. Will do. The next call was harder. I dialed my brother Tom in Phoenix, the only family member who'd stayed in touch regularly since Martha's death. Robert? Good to hear from you. How are Mark and the kids? That's actually why I'm calling, Tom. I explained the situation as simply as I could. The financial support, the secret planning, the attempted eviction, the legal realities. Tom listened without interrupting, which had always been his strength. Jesus, Robert, they really tried to throw you out of your own house? While I was buying Mark a birthday present. What are you going to do? I'm evicting them. Good. The simple support in his voice nearly broke me. After months of feeling like I was overreacting or being too sensitive, having someone immediately see the situation clearly was overwhelming. You think I'm doing the right thing? Robert, you've been supporting that family for 2 years. You saved their house, paid their bills, took care of their kids. And their response was to pack your belongings while you were out buying gifts. Yeah, you're doing the right thing. I keep thinking about Emma and Tyler. Emma and Tyler will be fine. Kids are resilient. What they won't be fine with is learning that their parents threw their grandfather out after he sacrificed his retirement to keep them housed and fed. That night, I worked until nearly midnight, building my case like Martha had taught me to build anything important, with patience, precision, and documentation for every claim. The legal folder now contained mortgage transfer documents, eviction procedures, tenant rights summaries, and precedent cases. David would handle the legal execution, but I wanted to understand every aspect of what was happening. The financial folder contained spreadsheets, bank statements, receipts, and Patricia's preliminary debt analysis. If Mark wanted to fight this in court, he'd have to explain to a judge why he stopped paying his mortgage while spending unemployment money on entertainment. The communication folder contained text message records, social media screenshots, recorded conversations, and email threads. Every lie, every manipulation, Every moment of planning my removal while accepting my financial support. The character folder was the most important. References from neighbors, documentation of my contributions to the children's lives, proof of my stability and responsibility. If they tried to paint me as an unstable old man who'd stolen their house, I had evidence showing exactly who I was and what I'd done for them. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Dad, we need to talk. This has gone too far." I stared at the message for a long time. 2 hours ago, he'd been threatening to fight me in court and accusing me of stealing his house. Now he wanted to talk, probably because Jessica had explained the legal realities to him. I typed back, "The eviction notice will be served tomorrow morning." After that, all communication goes through lawyers. His response came immediately. "Please don't do this. We can work something out." "You had 2 years to work something out. You chose to work me out instead." "Dad, I'm begging you." I turned off my phone and went back to my folders. Tomorrow, Mark and Jessica would receive official notice that they had 30 days to vacate my property. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. But tonight, for the first time since Martha died, I felt like I was in control of my own life. The feeling was unfamiliar, almost frightening in its intensity. But it was mine. I pulled out a legal pad and began writing my timeline. Every significant event, every payment, every conversation, every lie. When this went to court, and I was certain now that it would, I wanted the judge to see the complete picture. Not just the money, though the money was staggering. Not just the deception, though the deception was heartbreaking. The complete picture of a family that had taken everything and given nothing back, then tried to discard the person who'd sacrificed everything for them. At the bottom of the timeline, I wrote, "Robert Morrison, age 67, widower, homeowner, ready to defend what's mine." The words looked strong on paper, official, final. For the first time in months, I was ready for whatever came next. The next morning arrived with the sound of a process server's footsteps on my front porch. I watched from the kitchen window as Mark answered the door, his face still puffy from a sleepless night. The official envelope changed hands with the formality of a funeral, and Mark's shoulders sagged as he read the legal notice. 30 days. It was real now, stamped and served and legally binding. 20 minutes later, Carol Chen knocked on my door with a coffee pot and determination in her eyes. "Robert Morrison, you sit down and tell me everything." So I did. Over coffee, and the kind of breakfast Martha used to make, I explained 2 years of financial sacrifice, months of secret planning, and yesterday's brutal confrontation. Carol listened with the focused attention of a woman who'd raised 4 children and buried 1 husband. She knew the difference between family drama and family betrayal. "That poor girl," she said when I finished. "Jessica?" "No, honey. You. That poor girl Jessica is about to learn what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you." By noon, word had spread through the neighborhood with the efficiency of a small-town phone tree. Mrs. Patterson from across the street stopped by with a casserole and a story about seeing Mark buy expensive car parts, while I walked to the grocery store to save gas money. Mr. Rodriguez from 2 houses down brought his afternoon beer to my porch and shared his confusion about Mark's unemployment lasting so long when construction jobs were plentiful. "Guy your son's age should be working," he said, shaking his head. "My nephew got 3 job offers last month. Construction, plumbing, electrical, all good pay." The most revealing conversation came from Linda Walsh, Emma and Tyler's school principal. She called around 2 o'clock, her voice careful but concerned. "Mr. Morrison, I heard there might be some family changes affecting Emma and Tyler. I wanted to check on their stability." What kind of changes? Well, Mark came in this morning to update their emergency contacts. He tried to remove you from their files. My chest tightened. Tried to. I told him I needed written consent from all listed guardians before making changes. You're listed as their primary emergency contact and financial guarantor for their accounts. I remembered filling out those forms, Mark insisting that I be the primary contact since Jessica worked part-time, and he was between jobs. Another way they'd made me essential while planning to make me gone. I also wanted you to know, Linda continued, that several teachers have noticed changes in the children's behavior over the past few weeks. More anxiety, less focus. Tyler asked his teacher if grandparents could get divorced from their grandchildren. The knife in my chest twisted deeper. What did you tell him? That grandparents and grandchildren love each other forever, no matter what happens with houses or grown-up problems. After hanging up with Linda, I sat in Martha's old chair and felt the weight of what I was doing. Not just to Mark and Jessica, but to Emma and Tyler. Children who'd done nothing wrong except be born into a family that confused money with love. My phone rang. Tom calling from Phoenix. Robert, I've been thinking about our conversation last night. And? I want to help. What do you need? I need people to understand this isn't about revenge. It's about respect. Consider it done. I'm calling Aunt Helen, Cousin Sarah, and everyone else who actually showed up to Martha's funeral. They need to know what Mark and Jessica have been doing. By 4 o'clock, my phone was ringing every 20 minutes. Family members I hadn't spoken to in months, calling to express support and share their own stories about Mark's behavior at family gatherings. His complaints about supporting me, his hints about needing help with senior care options, his casual dismissal of my contributions to his household. The picture that emerged was devastating. Mark hadn't just been planning my removal from his house, he'd been preparing the family narrative, painting me as a burden who needed management rather than a man who'd sacrificed his retirement to save their home. Around 5 o'clock, I watched Mark and Jessica's afternoon unfold through my front window like a slow-motion car crash. 3 different neighbors stopped them on their way to the mailbox, conversations that started friendly and ended with uncomfortable silences. The mail carrier, who'd been delivering to this address for 8 years, asked Mark directly why Mr. Morrison's name was on all the mortgage correspondence. Jessica tried to walk to the corner store and came back 20 minutes later, her face red and tear-streaked. Mrs. Patterson later told me that Jessica had broken down in the cereal aisle, sobbing about legal papers and losing the house and not knowing where they would go. I told her, Mrs. Patterson said, with the satisfaction of someone delivering well-deserved justice, that maybe she should have thought about that before she packed your belongings like you were already dead. The real blow came at 6:30. Mark's employer called the house phone, the number he'd given as his primary contact. I answered because I'd been answering that phone for 2 years. This is Janet from Morrison Construction. Is Mark available? He's not taking calls right now. May I ask what this is about? Well, he missed his shift today and didn't call in. That's not like him. We wanted to make sure he was okay. My heart stopped. His shift? Yes, sir. Mark's been working for us for 3 months now. Good worker, reliable. That's why we were concerned when he didn't show up. After Janet hung up, I sat staring at the phone. 3 months. Mark had been working for 3 months while telling me he was unemployed, while letting me pay his mortgage and utilities and groceries, while accepting money for job search expenses and interview clothes. The deception was complete now. Not just planning my removal, but actively lying about employment while I drained my retirement account to support his family. At 7 o'clock, Mark knocked on my door. His face was gray, his clothes wrinkled, his entire appearance suggesting a man who'd run out of options. Dad, We need to talk. The eviction notice was served this morning. All communication goes through lawyers now. Please, 5 minutes. There are things you don't understand. I looked at my son through the screen door. This man who'd been lying to me for months while I paid his bills. Mark, Morrison Construction called. They were worried when you missed your shift today. The blood drained from his face so completely I thought he might collapse. I can explain. You've been employed for 3 months while telling me you were looking for work. Dad, you've been taking my money while earning your own. It's not what you think. I closed the door quietly and turned the deadbolt. Outside, I could hear Mark standing on the porch, his breathing quick and panicked. After a few minutes, his footsteps retreated down the steps. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and legal proceedings. But tonight, the neighborhood knew the truth. The family knew the truth. Mark's employer knew the truth. The man who'd tried to throw me out of my own house was about to learn what it felt like to have nowhere left to hide. 3 weeks later, I sat in courtroom 3B watching Mark and Jessica whisper frantically with their attorney, a young man named Stevens, who'd clearly taken their case thinking it would be a simple tenant rights dispute. His expression grew more strained each time David handed him another folder of evidence. "Mr. Morrison," Judge Harrison called, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 30 years separating truth from manipulation. "Please approach the bench." I stood slowly, feeling every one of my 67 years, but also feeling something I hadn't experienced in months: complete confidence in my position. David walked beside me, carrying 3 banker's boxes filled with 2 years of meticulous documentation. "Your Honor," David began, his voice steady and professional, "this is a straightforward case of property ownership and lawful eviction. Mr. Robert Morrison owns the property in question and has the legal right to terminate tenancy with proper notice." Stevens, Mark's attorney, stood quickly. "Your Honor, this is a case of elder financial abuse disguised as property law. Mr. Morrison manipulated my clients during a financial crisis and essentially stole their family home." Judge Harrison looked between the 2 lawyers, then directly at me. "Mr. Morrison, please explain how you came to own this property." I cleared my throat, thinking about all the nights I'd practiced this moment in front of Martha's photo. "Your Honor, in March 2023, my son Mark defaulted on his mortgage payments and faced foreclosure. I paid the outstanding balance and assumed ownership to prevent my grandchildren from becoming homeless." "And your son was aware of this arrangement?" "He signed all the transfer documents. My attorney, Mr. David Walsh, handled the legal work and explained the terms clearly." David opened the first box and pulled out a thick folder. "Your Honor, here are the original mortgage documents, the default notices, and the ownership transfer papers, all signed by Mark Morrison in the presence of a notary." Stevens stepped forward. "Your Honor, my client was under duress. He was facing the loss of his home and had no choice but to sign whatever papers were put in front of him." "Mr. Stevens," Judge Harrison said, her tone suggesting she'd heard this argument before. "Duress implies that Mr. Morrison created the financial crisis. Did he cause your client to default on his mortgage?" "No, Your Honor, but..." "Did he force your client to accept financial assistance?" "No, but the power dynamic..." "Mr. Stevens, I'm going to stop you there." Judge Harrison turned back to David. "Mr. Walsh, please present your evidence." What followed was 2 hours of systematic destruction. David methodically presented every folder, every spreadsheet, every document I'd organized during those late nights after the eviction notice was served. The financial evidence came first. Bank statements showing $127,000 in payments over 24 months. Mortgage records proving I'd made every payment since assuming ownership. Utility bills, grocery receipts, medical expenses, home repairs. A complete financial picture that left no doubt about who had been supporting whom. Your Honor, David said, spreading the bank statements across the evidence table. Mr. Morrison didn't just help his son during a brief crisis. He completely subsidized his son's family's lifestyle while his son claimed to be unemployed. Stevens objected. Relevance, Your Honor? Your clients are claiming financial abuse, Judge Harrison replied. Mr. Morrison's financial contributions are absolutely relevant. Continue, Mr. Walsh. The employment records came next. David presented the job search documentation I'd maintained, showing Mark's applications dropping to 0 over 3 months ago. Then came the bombshell. Employment. Records from Morrison Construction showing Mark had been working full-time for the past 3 months. Your Honor, David continued, while Mr. Morrison believed his son was unemployed and struggling to find work, Mark Morrison was actually earning $4,200 per month and hiding this income from his father. The courtroom went silent. I watched Mark's face cycle through shame, anger, and desperation. Jessica stared at her hands, tears running down her cheeks. Stevens tried to recover. Your Honor, my client's employment status doesn't negate the ownership issues. Actually, it does, Judge Harrison interrupted. It speaks directly to the credibility of their claims. If they were willing to deceive Mr. Morrison about something as fundamental as employment, why should this court believe their other allegations? David pulled out the communication evidence. Text messages between Mark and Jessica planning my removal. Social media posts complaining about freeloading parents, recorded conversations about selling the house and starting fresh somewhere I couldn't follow. Your Honor, this wasn't a family disagreement. This was a calculated plan to remove Mr. Morrison from his own property after extracting maximum financial benefit from his support. Stevens objected again. Those communications are taken out of context. Mr. Stevens, Judge Harrison said, I'm reading messages where your clients refer to Mr. Morrison as the dad situation and discuss getting him out while simultaneously accepting his money. What context would make that acceptable? The most damaging evidence came last. David presented the timeline I'd constructed, showing the parallel tracks of my financial support and their secret planning. Every payment I'd made corresponded with a message or post about getting rid of me. Every act of generosity was met with resentment and calculation. Your Honor, David said, his voice carrying the weight of complete certainty. Mr. Morrison didn't manipulate anyone. He saved his son's family from foreclosure and continued supporting them while they planned his removal. This isn't elder abuse. This is family betrayal. Judge Harrison called for a 15-minute recess. I watched Mark and Jessica huddle with Stevens, their conversation growing more heated by the minute. Stevens kept shaking his head, pointing at the evidence table like it was radioactive. When court resumed, Stevens requested permission to present character witnesses. Your Honor, Mr. Morrison's neighbors and family will testify that he's been controlling and manipulative throughout this process. Permission granted. Call your first witness. Stevens called Mrs. Patterson from across the street. I held my breath, remembering her bringing casseroles and offering support. But as she was sworn in, her face was sympathetic toward me, not Mark. Mrs. Patterson, you've observed the Morrison family dynamic for 2 years. Have you witnessed controlling behavior from Mr. Robert Morrison? Mrs. Patterson looked confused. Controlling behavior? You mean like paying for their groceries when Mark lost his job? Or mowing their lawn when Jessica was sick? Or taking the children to school every day when their car broke down? Stephen's face fell. Mrs. Patterson, have you seen Mr. Morrison make unreasonable demands or threats? The only unreasonable thing I've seen is Mark buying expensive car parts while his father walked to the store to save gas money. That boy should be ashamed of himself." Stevens quickly dismissed her. His second witness, Carol Chen, was even worse for their case. "Mrs. Chen, you're aware that Mr. Morrison is evicting his son's family? Do you think that's appropriate?" Carol's eyes flashed with anger. "I think it's appropriate that people face consequences for their actions. Robert Morrison lost his wife 2 years ago and spent his retirement money keeping that family housed and fed. And their gratitude was to pack his belongings while he was buying birthday gifts. If that's not grounds for eviction, I don't know what is." After Carol's testimony, Stevens looked like a man who wanted to be anywhere else. Judge Harrison called the final recess. "Mr. Stevens, do you have any additional witnesses or evidence?" "No, Your Honor." "Mr. Walsh?" "The evidence speaks for itself, Your Honor." Judge Harrison reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up, her expression grave and final. "This case presents a clear picture of financial exploitation, but not in the way the defendants claim. Mr. Robert Morrison provided substantial financial support to his son's family over 24 months, totaling over $127,000. During this period, the defendants not only failed to contribute to household expenses, but actively planned to remove Mr. Morrison from the property he legally owns." She paused, letting the words sink in. The defendant's claim of manipulation is contradicted by their own communications, which show calculated deception and planning. Mr. Mark Morrison concealed employment income while accepting financial support from his father. Mrs. Jessica Morrison initiated the packing of Mr. Morrison's belongings without notice or discussion. Mark was crying now, silent tears that made him look younger than his 32 years. The eviction notice was properly served and legally justified. The defendants have 17 days remaining to vacate the property. However, this court is also concerned about the financial deception involved. Judge Harrison looked directly at Mark. "Mr. Morrison, you accepted over $127,000 in support while concealing employment income. This court orders you to repay $15,000 to your father within 90 days, representing the mortgage payments made after you began concealing your employment." Stevens objected weakly, but Judge Harrison cut him off. "Furthermore, all legal fees incurred by Mr. Robert Morrison in this proceeding will be paid by the defendants. This case represents a clear abuse of an elderly person's generosity and trust." She banged her gavel once, sharp and final. "Case dismissed. Eviction order stands." The courtroom emptied slowly. Mark and Jessica sat in their chairs like statues, probably calculating how they were going to find $15,000 plus legal fees, plus a new place to live in 17 days. David packed up our evidence with the satisfaction of a man who just won an unwinnable case. "Robert, that was comprehensive. I've never seen such thorough documentation in a family dispute. I watched my son and his wife finally stand and walk toward the exit." Mark looked back once, his eyes meeting mine across the courtroom. I saw everything in that look: shame, regret, desperation, and maybe, finally, understanding of what he'd lost. But I also saw something else. The expectation that I would fix this for him, just like I'd fixed everything else for the past 2 years. I looked away first. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun felt warmer than it had in weeks. David shook my hand and promised to file the judgment paperwork within the week. "Robert, you did the right thing. That was justice, not revenge." I nodded, thinking about Martha and what she would have said about all this. She'd have been heartbroken about Mark's choices, but proud that I'd finally stood up for myself. As I walked to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. Mark's voice, broken and pleading. "Dad, please! We need to talk. I stopped but didn't turn around. The judge said 17 days, Mark. Dad, I'm sorry. I know I screwed up, but I'm your son. Family forgives family. I thought about that. About 2 years of being family to people who saw me as a bank account. About birthday gifts ignored, and belongings packed and plans made in secret. Family supports family too, Mark. You might want to remember that for your next family. I got in my car and drove home to the house that was legally, completely, finally mine. The house felt different when I walked through the front door that evening. Not just quiet, but settled. Like a building that had finally stopped shifting on its foundation. I set my keys on the kitchen counter next to the birthday gift that still sat untouched, its velvet box now a monument to everything that had gone wrong. 17 days. That's how long Mark and Jessica had to find somewhere else to live, come up with $15,000 in restitution, and figure out how to pay David's legal fees. The math was simple and brutal. My phone started ringing at 8 o'clock. Tom calling from Phoenix. Robert, I heard about the court ruling. How are you holding up? I'm fine, Tom. Better than fine, actually. Over the next 3 days, I watched their world collapse with methodical precision. Mark's credit application for an apartment was denied. His income was decent, but his credit history showed the missed mortgage payments that had led to foreclosure. No landlord wanted a tenant who'd defaulted on a house. Payment, Jessica's part-time job, disappeared when her boss heard about the court case. A small boutique couldn't afford employees with legal troubles, especially ones who might need time off for eviction proceedings. The most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Emma and Tyler's school required updated financial information for the next year's enrollment. When Mark couldn't provide proof of stable housing or explain the legal judgment against him, the administration suggested he might want to consider transferring the children to their new district before the school year ended. I watched through my front window as Mark loaded boxes into a rented truck. Not the organized packing Jessica had done with my belongings, but the desperate cramming of people who'd run out of time and options. Neighbors walked by without stopping to help, their sympathy completely exhausted. On day 14, Jessica knocked on my door. Her face was hollow, her eyes red from crying. Robert, please. We found a small apartment, but we need the security deposit. Just $800. We'll pay you back from the first paycheck. I looked at this woman who'd told me to find an assisted living facility 3 weeks ago. Jessica, what happened to the money Mark earned while lying to me about being unemployed? We spent it on bills and other things. Other things. Please. The children need stability. The children needed stability 2 years ago. That's why I sacrificed my retirement to provide it. I closed the door quietly, the same way I'd closed it the night Mark tried to explain away 3 months of employment deception. On day 16, they were gone. I watched the rental truck disappear around the corner, carrying away 2 years of complicated history. The house felt enormous without them, every room echoing with the absence of chaos. Mark had left the birthday gift on the kitchen counter. The watch was still in its box, still wrapped in tissue paper, still carrying all the hope I'd felt driving to his house that afternoon 3 weeks ago. I put it in the drawer with Martha's jewelry. Some gifts aren't meant to be given. Some love isn't meant to be accepted. For the first time in months, the house was mine completely. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful,